The sky was dark black as the rain came down, straight and silvery like a steel rod. Crashing thunder roared vigorously, made the world known to its lethal energy. Trees swayed with the violent gust of wind which swept up the streets. Amidst all the chaos made by the universe, a shivering figure sat on a bench at the bus stop. Her fearful eyes said nothing, whether it was a fear of dreadful weather or of sitting alone on a deserted road, that too in the late hours of the day. She hugged herself and rubbed her palms on her bare arms to provide some warmth. Rising from her seat, she stepped forward and roamed her eyes around, searching for the sight of a bus or a cab, anything that could help her to reach home. Taehyung, she whispered to herself as she recalled her husband who would be worrying about her. She could call him and ask him to pick her up, but as clumsy she is, she forgot her cell phone at home and now she could only pray to find some help. She flinched when a loud thunder roared in the sky. Goosebumps arose all over her body when a black car stopped in front of her. She instinctively stepped back, thinking about the worst happening. The car door opened, and a tall man clad in burgundy three-piece suit made an appearance. Relief washed over her when she looked at his face and found her husband making her way towards her, penetrating through the heavy downpour. His hair disheveled due to the amount of times he ran his hand through them. His tie hung loosely around his neck with the upper two buttons of his shirt undone, and his face expressions were screaming how concerned he was. With three long strides, he took her in his embrace, taking her by surprise. His musky fragrance hit her nostrils and she felt herself melting in his arms. His warmth provided needed comfort to her cold body. She wrapped her small arms around his torso and clutched his shoe jacket in her palms. She sighed and buried her face on his chest. He sighed and tightened his grip in response. They stayed like that for a few minutes until a cold gust of wind blew past them. Wine shivered in his embrace. The young loosened his grip and parted away from her. Cupping her face between his hands, he peered into her eyes. Are you okay? He asked gently, his eyes complimenting the softness of his voice along with the flecks of concern. She nodded slightly, her body craving to feel his warmth again. Let's go home, he said and motioned towards his car. Wyan followed him, grabbing the plastic bag which was placed on the bench. Her forehead creased with confusion as to why he didn't shower question on her about her disappearance from home at night. Nevertheless, hopped in the car beside him. Go and change, he said, eyeing her slightly dampened clothes, forgetting about his own. But dinner, she mused, thinking about the half cooked dinner that was waiting for her attention. I'll take care of that. You go and change wine, he uttered, trying to be as calm as possible. He had up-teamed questions to ask, but her comfort was his first priority. She looked down and nodded. Placing the plastic bag on the coffee table, she dragged herself towards their shared bedroom. Taehyung sat on the edge of bed waiting for Wyan, who was taking forever in the bathroom. He wanted answers from her, but he refrained himself from asking during dinner time. Wyan came outside the bathroom. Taehyung stood before her. His tall figure towered over her small ones, unintentionally intimidating her. Why did you go outside, Wyan? You know how worried I was, and you even left your phone here. I was at the verge of losing my... I'm sorry, she mumbled and looked down. Where did you go, Wyan? He asked, his heart drumming inside his ribcage, thinking about earlier when he was going mad searching for her. The half-cooked dinner, the lonely house, only he knew how he passed those few terrifying hours. I went to buy bacon. I needed it for dinner, but we had none home. I was coming back when all of the sudden it started pouring, and I got stuck there, and I forgot to bring my phone. I'm really sorry. It won't happen again. I won't go outside the house ever again. I'm sorry. She blurted out everything in one breath, but didn't dare to look at him. Her constant apologies only added to his distress. Her apologizing for every big or small thing was making him annoyed. He asked for an explanation, not for never-ending apology. He sighed and lifted his hand to glide through his hair, but halted midway when he saw her flinching badly at his action. She shielded her face with her hands and stepped back. He stood there stunned. Wine. As he took a step towards her, she stepped back and burst into tears. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Please don't hit me, she cried out, shivering with fear. Taehyung stood rooted at his spot, gaping at her with wide eyes. Her words were like pointed daggers to his heart. He watched her as she sobbed and continued stepping away from him. Please don't hit me, I'm sorry. She mumbled the same thing again and again. Well, listen. As he took a step towards her, she flinched and skidded towards the corner of the room. She slid down and curled herself like a ball. Burying her face in her knees, she wailed like a child. He froze on his spot, shocked and concerned at his reaction. As much as he wanted to console her, he knew his presence was scaring at her at that moment. So he decided otherwise and stepped away from her and exited the room, giving her the time to calm down. The young stepped inside the room after an hour. Wine was sitting in the corner, sniffing. Her tear-streaking face was glowing in the dimly lit room. Her words were lingering in his mind, leaving a feeling of uneasiness and bafflement. Why would she react like that? It couldn't be out of reflex. Her reaction was out of something she went through in the past or she witnessed. He was well aware of the delicacy of situation and knew it should be handled with calmness. Any impulsive reaction will trigger her, and he didn't want that. He slowly made his way towards her, announcing his presence to her. He stood before her and watched her stiffening visibly. She stuck to the wall and reflects. Can I sit here? He probed, keeping his voice the softest. He watched her gulp before she nodded. He settled beside her, maintaining small distance, trying not to make her uncomfortable in any way. She squirmed on her spot, sticking to the wall more and more. Relax, Vian, he said when he noticed her tense up figure. She peered at him through her glossy eyes. You won't hit me, right? She asked like a scared child. He felt her heart twisting with pain. Never in his life ever he thought of hurting someone, and here his own wife was asking him not to hit her. Did he fail to make her feel safe around him? Did he do something wrong to set a perspective like this before her? He was devastated hearing her. He firmed his jaw, gulping down his hurt, and shook his head in assurance. I won't. I can never hit you. She sniffed and looked away from him. Why, why would you think I hit you? He asked after a brief pause. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. My dad used to hit my mom whenever she made any mistake, so I thought. She trailed off. The young's eyes widened with shock at the new revelation. Did he did he hit you too? He hesitantly asked, scared of the outcomes of his question. No, he never hit me. He was a good father. She clarified and looked at Taehyung, who was staring at her intensely as if thinking about something deeply. I made a mistake, so I thought you will hit me. First of all, I would never hit you. In fact, I can never think about hitting you, let alone doing it. You don't have to be scared of me, eh? He promised. Wine gazed into his eyes as if searching his sincerity. Contemplating for some time, she finally nodded. He hesitantly reached out to hold her hand, and luckily she let him. He gave a gentle squeeze to her cold hand. Why did your mother stay with him in an abusive relationship? He asked, unsure whether he should be talking about it or not. Whenever I used to ask her to go away from him because I don't like him, she shut me up every time saying she made mistakes. She made him angry and that's why he raised his hand on her. Then I stopped asking. I used to curl in the corner, hearing her painful scream for hours at night. Those were horrible. Her chin quivered and tears cascaded down her eyes. The young strayed from inside hearing her. He saw glimpses of the little Vine who was scared and wanted an escape from the traumatizing ambience. He shifted towards her and cradled her in his arms. He stroked her head as she sobbed on his chest. I was scared, Taehyung. I spent each and every second with fear that if I did something wrong, he will hit me too. She nestled in his arms as the horrible memories of past flooded back in her mind. She covered her ears, clinging on him for her life. Calm down, Juan. It's over. You are not alone, okay? You have me. He mumbled sweet nothings in her ear and she relaxed after a few minutes. Taeyong heard her soft snores as she slept in his embrace. He carefully scooped her and carried her towards the bed. Laying her down on the mattress, he lay beside her, cuddling her. Sleep was far away from his eyes. Her past revelation left his mind a mess. Vine clutched on Taeyong's arms as they stepped inside her parents' house. She was confused as to why all of a sudden Taeyong wanted to pay them a visit. More than confused, she was scared. After what happened yesterday night, she didn't want him to do or say anything that would let her mother getting into any trouble. Vine, Taeyong, what a pleasant surprise. Vine forced off to smile when he gently pulled her in a hug. How are you doing? He asked, parting away from her. She just nodded in response. His gaze shifted from Wine to Taeyong, who was looking at him with cold eyes. He smiled at him and patted his shoulder as greeting. Taeyong didn't reciprocate the smile, which made Wine's father confused, but he shrugged it off. Wine, why don't you go inside and meet your mother? I need to have a few words with your father, he uttered. His voice was calm yet authoritative. Her pupils dilated in fear as she tensed up at the thought of leaving him alone with her father. But go, Wine. He looked at her worried face and his eyes softened instantly. He blinked his eyes as if giving her assurance. She glanced between the two men and left from there. What is it, Taeyong? Why don't we sit and talk, father in law? His words left the old man with an uneasy feeling. He never called him father in law. Instead, he used to call him dad, and his voice used to hold respect for him, but this time his tone lacked esteem and formality. They advanced towards the couch and settled down across each other. The ambience turned intense as two pairs of eyes stared at each other, one with confusion whilst other with coldness and hidden disgust. As the silence stretched further, Wine's father cleared his throat, becoming restless with passing seconds. Wine, she went outside last night without informing me. He commenced after a long silence. Oh, he let out a sigh in relief and chuckled. She becomes careless sometime. I'll talk to her not to make you worry and inform you beforehand. He smiled in assurance. The young controlled the urge to scoff on his face and lean against the couch, folding his hand on his chest. You don't have to worry about it. I had taken care of her. She will think twice before doing something like that again. The young smirked. Wine's father sat upright. His smile disappeared as Call took over his wrinkled features. What did you do? He gazed at him. His voice shifted from warm to rough in seconds. Nothing, just few words to keep her in line. He was cut off when Vian's father pounced on him. He grabbed him by his collar and made him stand up. How dare you lay your fingers on my daughter? He roared on his face, but he remained calm. His smirk widened in response. Why are you so up about it? I just taught her a lesson. He shrugged nonchalantly and wrenched his hands off his collar. Lesson? Are you serious? You could have talked to her if you were worried. You got no rights to hit my daughter. He twisted his hand, shaking with anger. Vine and her mother came running, hearing their loud noise. But Vine said it's okay to hit your wife whenever she commit a mistake because her father used to do the same with her mother. He grated out. Vine's father froze on his spot as realization dawned upon him. He glanced at Vine, who was now shedding tears, and behind her, his wife was trying to cover up her swollen cheek with her hair. I used to look up at you for your business achievements. I want to be like you, a great businessman and a decent man, but not anymore because now I know you are anything but decent. You are an evil of a person, a weak person who considers that hitting his wife is a task of pride. I am disgusted by you. And you, mom, you are equally responsible for this. You could have shown him his place, but you chose to stay silent. He turned to his mother in law, who looked at him through her glossy eyes. I stayed for Vian. I wanted to give her a happy childhood with being afraid to even breathe is what you call a happy childhood. Your every action becomes calculative is what a happy childhood is. You get nightmares of your mother's horrible scream. Wow, what a happy childhood I have, and I didn't realize it until yesterday. She cried out, looking at her mother. I asked you to leave him and go far away, away from this toxic relationship, but you stayed. You are equally responsible for traumatizing me. She voiced out her bottled up emotions. I stayed for you, Ian. You needed both parents. She muttered as tears dropped from her eyes. I didn't, Mom. I didn't need him. She was cut off when she held her mother's hand and she hissed. Vine rolled up her blouse sleeves and gasped, seeing bluish bruise all over her arm. Some were faded while some were looking fresh. Mom, she whispered and sobbed, hugging her gently. I hate you, Dad. I hate you the most in the world, she yelled, looking at her father. His eyes turned glossy as he looked at her with what seems like guilt. But wasn't it too late to regret about his actions? You stayed because of me, right, Mom? But now you don't have to worry about me. Divorce him and leave your life away from this monster. She tried to pester her mother. Come with me. We will go away from here. In a grown up body, the little vine called out for her mother, but she looked down and shook her head. I can't. Vine scoffed and stepped away from her. You have to choose between your husband and your daughter. If you choose him, I'll never come back here. It's horrible to witness the scars on your body. I can't do it anymore. She looked at her mother with hopeful eyes, but she looked down. I got my answers. She turned and walked towards Taehyung. Let's go, Taehyung. I failed once again. She herself doesn't want to free from this hell. She cried whilst Taehyung held her close and glanced at her parents before leaving. Vine and Taehyung sat near a lake, surrounded by the wonders of nature. Vine was nestled in Taehyung's arms, sobbing out her grief as the latter stroked her back. Why does she endure everything, Taehyung? For me, I'm responsible for her misery. If I wouldn't exist, she would have left him and led her life peacefully. She bawled her eyes out, blaming herself, though she was never at fault. His heart clenched, and all he could think was to erase her painful memories somehow and lessen her pain, no matter what he had to do for that. Calm down, Ryan. Stop blaming yourself. It's not your fault. It was never your fault. Your mother chose this life herself. We can't force her to walk out of this toxic relationship. You tried your best, okay? Stop crying over what you can't change. He placed a lingering pack on her head. They sat there in silence, staring at the calm lake, which was the opposite of turmoil inside them. The serene yet thick silence broke with Vian's phone written down. She reached out for her cell phone and her mother's name displayed on the screen. She looked at Taehyung, who gestured her to take the call. Vian, her soft voice full of warmth, reached her ears as he picked the call. Are you there, Vian? She asked when she didn't get any response from Vian. Yes, Mom. Will you help me, Vian? Help with what? Help in getting rid of this bothersome marriage. Will you help me in getting freedom? Will you help me divorcing him? Van was lost at words, too shocked to say anything. She peered at Taehyung, who smiled at her reassuringly. All these years, I endured everything because I wanted your happiness, but I failed at that. Now I want to divorce him, not only for you but for myself too. But your mother is drained out, my child. She needs you beside her. Will you be with your mother, Van? Her voice broke at the end. I will, Mom. I'm coming to take you with me. She disconnected the call. Thank you so much, Taehyung. She hugged him tightly. I had accepted my fate just like my mother. If you didn't take the initiative today, I would have never speak out, nor my mother would ever be free from that man. She presented her gratitude before him, overwhelmed with glee. Though after a long wait, finally Wan succeeded in freeing her mother from years of pain with Taehyung's help. And about her father, he was left with guilt and will live with his remorse forever until his demise because there is no room for forgiveness for him, nor his apology meant anything now.